Welcome back, you're watching Storyboard. We all know that understanding the Indian consumer is a tricky and arduous task. Consumption structures and consumer behavior keeps changing and consumers' needs and desires are growing faster than ever before. But according to market analyst Rama Bijapurkar's latest book, A Never Before World, the real war for the consumer's rupee begins now. Listen in to her demystifying the Indian middle class and identifying new demographics.
I'm going to just pick up 4 statements from one part of your book, and that's the only part we're going to talk about today. The first statement reads, the much touted middle class that is supposed to be driving India's consumer market opportunity is actually India's upper class, the 20% on household by income. Then you said there is no real global consumer market yet in India. Then you say that there are 2 problems of too little data and too much data. Both can be dangerous. And finally, there's the killer. You say 78% of Indian households are not ready to consume. Now, if I go through everything I've read without reading the textbooks or going to college, you know, in media and in newspapers and business magazines, it's counter to everything I've read. We've got a burgeoning middle class. We've got consumers wanting to buy products at every price point possible. And well, this is what you're telling me. So how do you react to that?
First, I want to say that when I say 78% are not ready to consume, I'm saying that if you think of markets as most companies do, as middle class and non-middle class, right. Non-middle class not ready to consume, middle class absolutely ready to consume, then 78% are non-middle class not ready to consume. Right. On the other hand, if you go and look at Crawford Market pavement, if you look at stuff that comes out of China, if you look at a lot of small shops, everybody's consuming up and down. Sure. So the point is that if you have a $1.8 trillion or whatever of GDP, we assume that all of it is a middle class. Right. It's not. We're saying that 20% of it has about 50 to 60% of the total income. Sure. They have a lot of the savings, and so if you really want, you can't look London and go Tokyo. You can't look at the middle class and want 1.8 trillion GDP. You're not going to get it. So you have only a sliver. Right. It's contrary to what everybody believes, because I think, you know, it's like even the word middle class. When we delude ourselves by calling our upper class the middle class, we're assuming that there is something above the middle class and something below it. Right. But actually the middle class is the upper class. So the top 20%, whether you look at it by SEC, whether you look at it by consumption, whether you look at it by income, consultants' reports, market research reports, all that, whichever way you look at it, and I've tried very hard to make the 20 to 30 or 40 so we can feel good about ourselves, but it really is just that. Right. So that means then that if you're going to do all your business planning and numbers and everything, assuming a much larger middle class, then someone's going to lose their jobs.
No, but one believes that people are not losing jobs. Assumptions are made, business plans are made based on, you know, these 3, the middle class and above middle class and below middle class, and that's whatever 500 million, 450 million, 600 million, whatever number. And business plans are made, and companies and brands continue to go based on those numbers.
And continue to make excuses. For example, you know, if you look at, let's say, retail banking. Right. Okay, first you give them so much credit and then you push credit below where it really ought to go so that it can fund all the two-wheelers. Right. And then after that, suddenly when times go bad, the banks decide that they'll worship at the altar of prudence and NPAs rising and so on. So then suddenly they stop lending. Below, not only just below where it should go, they stop lending well above where it can reasonably go in terms of credit. Then as a result, the two-wheeler sales fall. Then everybody says that the two-wheeler sales have fallen compared to the previous period. So you're comparing the period which has less credit than is even reasonable to the period that had more credit than is reasonable, with some NPAs in the middle, and then you put it all together and you say, oh, you know, things are, the market's down and we're having a downturn, and then we say the government of India must roll back excise duties. So we've just been playing a lot of these games. Right. We've really been playing a lot of these games.
One of the takeouts from your number extrapolation is that perhaps in many categories we're going to be reaching complete saturation. Now, if you think of the middle class as bigger, well, that wouldn't be the true. We'll say we've hit only 150 million, we've got another 300 million. Yeah. But if it's only at 20% of the population, the richest 20%, we'll be hitting the bottom.
And I've always maintained that the remaining 80, that, you know, I don't accept the notion that below the 20 are non-consumers. Right. However, that seems to be the conventional wisdom. I'm saying if you look at how much of the income and how much of the expenditure is below, it's all there. It's just that the big companies of the kind that you and I know about are not really capturing a lot of that. And the fact also is that this 20% is growing.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
Also in bad times, this 20% tends to increase its income, because in bad times, the rich get richer.
Right.
So if you leave out the Hindustan levers of the world who are going all the way down, there's a 20% India, I'm saying there's a 40% India and a 40% below that, right? So the 40%, so some companies are targeting all of them. Most companies are just targeting the 20, and that's where the crying about growth and slowdown and all that is coming from. Having said that, if you look at automobiles, you know, there's a lot of talk about slowdown of four-wheelers, but the penetration even in that top 20% is low.
Right.
Right. If you look at, on the other hand, if you look at certain other goods which have a higher penetration, if you look at television sets and you do all that, you have to either persuade the 20% to upgrade their entire television sets, but you can't keep flogging the same horse again and again.
Sure. Now, one more sort of aspect that strikes me is, again, our retail infrastructure, modern retail infrastructure, is almost targeted to a 500 million or 600 million middle class. And now you see malls closing down or outlets closing down. Is it again the same thing, that the market is not as big as they thought it was?
I think retail is a double whammy also. One is the market's not as big as it is. We in fact find that a lot of consumers, if you talk to them, tell you that they'll go and look in the mall. So the mall is this great big browsing place.
Right.
And it's also the hangout place. And then you'll go and buy a knockoff, you'll buy at a high street, because you can't afford to buy consistently. And because I think malls have been run more by retailers who want to, who are not willing to go through the entire business of catering merchandise to the price point at which it will actually sell. So yeah, we have an oversupply of malls. We have a very high price actually, rental of those malls. So even the pricing gets marked up beyond where it will go. So for the kind of end price of organized retail that we're delivering stuff at, this top 20%, even half of that is finding it hard to afford it.
Right. Now, we are seeing this trend, and it's increasing, that big brands, established brands, and especially the high-priced brands, are discounting heavily.
Yes.
Especially in, say, in
apparel
and so on. Heavy discounts. Rather than going this heavy discounting rate, is it more sensible to, say, use this as a price discovery and say, this is the kind of price at which it should retail?
I completely, there is absolutely a case for that, because I'm often told by people that, when we have sales, when we have discounts, you see what the queues are like. But that means, according to me, that to begin with, the price that you put it at was just your notion of what the value of that particular brand actually is. Every time, so which is why you're seeing so much discounting. It's almost like you need the fig leaf of saying my brand is targeted there.
Right.
Whereas actually I think all price points need to really come down if you want a larger market, because when you're discounting also, you're taking a punt on the fact that you will increase volume when you have a decrease. So clearly there is enough margin for you to play the price volume game. So why we don't take a step down in a lot of things, I don't really know.
Lots of lessons and insights there, plenty more in the book. We'll take another break here. On the other side, sponsorship marketing with HSBC and the big winner at the FEs.